Chris Hayes was recently talking to a conservative activist by the name of Ben Dominic, and Hayes asked a really interesting question about the GOP potentially lying to those in the party. Let's take a look.
You know, rank and file members of conservative grassroots who I just substantively disagree with. These hucksters tell you things that are false. They lie to you. Ted Cruz lies to you. Heritage Action lies to you. Everybody lies to you. There's a whole cottage industry before the election to tell you you're winning an election they're losing. They tell you your ideas are popular when they are not. They tell you your party is winning when it is not. They tell you the president is losing this and he looks terrible because people are storming the World War II memorial. At what point do grassroots conservatives stop allowing their leadership to lie to them?
Well, I think that you have to keep in mind the leadership lies to themselves as well. They lied to themselves about their ability to control the situation. They lied to themselves about the ability to offer an alternative approach from the Senate side that could get taken up by the House at the get-go. I think that essentially you're seeing a lot of people who are lying to each other about the nature of the policies and the nature of the political strategy that they're employing. And I think that in a sense they got distracted from what I think is one of the biggest lies of all that was told to anybody in Washington. Sometimes it is pretty profitable to tell lies, tell people what they want to hear. The only problem is when it runs into smack dab into reality.
Ben Dominic from the Heartland Institute. Thanks a lot. Stick around.
Thanks.
Fascinating, because it seems as though Dominic is totally acknowledging that the GOP does lie to those in the party. So I'm going to start with Paul, since he is a conservative Republican. Do you feel like you've been lied to by these hucksters, as was mentioned in that video?
Generally, no. Look, I worked for two presidents in the White House, Clinton and Bush, as a conservative Republican. I think D.C. today is beyond a train wreck. We have a president who doesn't engage Congress. We've got a lot of infighting and bickering over clear divisions on major issues. And I don't see our base lying to us at all. I think I see our base as frustrated with a media and a president that can get away consistently with so many things that had it been a Republican, he would have been skewered, and Bush was skewered, and still is 7 years or 6 years.
As he should be.
No, out of office.
Bush was a train wreck. You want to talk about train wreck?
I disagree, ma'am.
You disagree? He destroyed our economy. He got us involved in a preemptive war. He was a complete and utter disaster. He destroyed our civil liberties, and Obama continues to do so. You're really going to say that Bush was not a terrible president?
Absolutely. We should have an hour conversation on that so I can address every single one of those points.
That's absurd. But go ahead.
We all have positions on that.
So I look at the lack of leadership that we have today, and to me it goes to the top, to the president. And I think our Republican base is just disgusted with what we see happening to our country before us. I think a lot of our Republicans have different ways of trying to handle this problem. Some may do it right, some may do it wrong. But look, I don't think we can take isolated incidents like we may take with our Republican Party and certain members of COPS and generalize that to our party. I think we on our Republican side are very proud of our values, and that's not going to change. Do I think some people are disgusted with maybe a lack of motivation or going after certain things that we think the media should pay attention to? Absolutely. So, hey, look, I look at D.C. today as not what our founding fathers expected of our electeds to be from the top down, and we've got a lot of work to do.
I find it fascinating that you think that the Republican Party should stay true to its conservative values. Its conservative values are precisely the reason why they lost the last election.
Well, see, I would disagree with you that. I would say that it's not necessarily conservative values. There are Tea Party values. There are sort of farther right wing than the traditional conservative party used to be. The traditional conservatives used to be about, conservation of the environment. They used to be about, helping the poor. They used to have other policies that we sort of all in general agreed upon. And,
but if you look at
I don't see the Tea Party doing that.
I think we still are.
Really?
Yes.
If you look at the last election, though, Desi, and I do disagree with you a little bit about that, because in the last election, Tea Party values did take control of the Republican Party, and they focused on a ridiculous war on contraception and reproductive rights. They did not engage the Latino vote and the minority vote. I mean, they were so defiant in their social views, and that did end up hurting them. And just going back to what you said, Paul, about Obama refusing to work with the Republicans, that's all Obama did in his first term. That was the most frustrating part about his presidency. When it comes to the Affordable Care Act, that was a huge concession. That was a huge concession to Republicans. And now they're turning around and saying, like, no, we're not happy with it. And they're telling Republicans that it is largely unpopular. That is not true.
Not a single Republican voted for the Obamacare.
But it was the Heartland Institute's original policy.
Exactly.
But no, look, not a single Republican voted for it. It got pushed through when the Democrats were in control, and they had a Democrat in the White House. So look at what's happened since then. Remember what Nancy Pelosi said? Hey, we got to read the bill, right? We'll read it after we vote on it. I mean, those are the kind of things that disgusted so many Americans, which is why the Tea Party had such great success in turning the House over to the Republicans.
The Affordable Care Act originally was supposed to have a public option. The public option got scrapped because Obama wanted to work with the Republicans. So now we have a federal mandate to buy private insurance, something that is very, very popular with conservatives because, of course, they love corporations and they love companies. So now we're forced to buy from private insurers. I mean, that was a huge concession to Republicans. And then the reason why Congress did not vote for it is because they don't want Obama to get credit for something that could possibly be very popular with the American people.
It was a conservative idea, and even now conservatives don't like it.
Let me tell you one. I think there's one thing we're all agreeing on. And this comes back to Obamacare and policy. Has anybody here been to a VA hospital where our vets have to deal with disabilities and issues and injuries?
Yes.
The VA is one of the biggest train wrecks ever, and I go to it consistently along with other veterans for service. If the federal government cannot run our VA healthcare system effectively after all these years, how can we expect them
Why
to
don't
run
you discuss the cuts to funding for those types of services?
They have increased funding consistently, and both sides of the aisle have, and Republicans consistently push for more treatment. You had a Democrat out here in Los Angeles walking the VA halls out here saying, how come I can't get answers or responses? That's a federal system, which is a blatant failure. They're not going to get any better with Obamacare, with citizens, 300 million across the country.
We got to go to break, but just unfortunately, I can go on with this for a really long time. But just going back to what Paul said, I mean, this is always the Republican argument: cut funding to something, and then turn around and say, "Oh, look at what a failure it is when the government is running it." They do the same thing with public education. You cut funding for public education, you create charter schools, you create a voucher system, as they've done in Louisiana, where you suck the money out of public schools and you put it into private vouchers. And then when the schools fail, Republicans will say, look at that school failing. The government can't do anything right. It's bullshit.